I'm going to call this meeting of the Gloucester School Committee to order. I'll remind everybody that the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of more than 10 people. The meeting will be conducted by remote participation. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or a device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. Maria, we'll have a roll call for attendance.
Kathy Clancy.
Present.
Mr. Favazza.
Present.
Chairman Pope.
Present.
Ms. Prince. I didn't hear you, Melissa.
You're
Here? Can you hear
Yep.
me?
Yes.
Yep, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm calling by phone.
Mayor Taken.
Present.
Ms. Watson.
Here.
And Ms. Wiesen.
Present.
Everybody, the entire school committee is present. That's my dog. And he'll be quiet down in a minute, I hope. Maybe not. Oral communications. If there's anybody here who would like to address the school committee, this will be their opportunity. I would ask that if you have already sent a letter or spoken at oral communications up to this point, that you try not to repeat yourself. We have been inundated with input on the superintendent search. And if you've taken part in the surveys, we have that information. So with that being said, and also please state your name and address, and please try to keep it to 3 minutes. And we will open it up for oral communications. Okay, Cheryl?
Okay, Cheryl Olson, 591 Essex Ave. I'm just wondering why I was unable to find the Zoom link for last Friday's meeting.
I don't know the answer to that. It was, I believe, posted on the city's website as well as ours, but
No, it was not. It was not on the website for the school committee.
Okay. Well, I apologize, and we will look into that. I do believe that recording of that meeting is or was available on the website also.
Mr. Chair, for what it's worth, on June 2nd at 9:43 a.m., a link and calendar entry was added to the city's website stating the June 5th, 4 p.m. meeting. So it was at least in the city's side of it. I'm not sure if it made it to our website or not, but the statutory requirement for posting the meeting was met June 2nd, 9:43 a.m.
Okay. Once again, Cheryl, I apologize. Not much we can do about that at this point. Anybody else like to speak at oral communications? Okay. All right. Seeing none, I'm going to close oral communications. The next item on the agenda is basically comments from the chairperson. Well, here we are, and we have received a we've been inundated with responses as well as the survey, but it's been a long process to get to this point. We received originally 21 applications. The school committee advertised for people to be on the search committee. We end up choosing 14 members of the search committee. They looked at all of the applications and interviewed seven, was it 9 or 7 applicants? And they went through the long process and sent 5 on to the school committee. We interviewed all of them. We reduced it down to 2. And then we went on site visits to their district, and they came here, and then we've interviewed them again. I'd like to thank everybody for the participation. I'd like to thank all of the people who have applied. I'd like to thank all of the members of the search committee, all of the members of the different panels on the site visits, all of the people who have filled out the survey and filled it back in, as well as the people who have contacted us directly. There's been a very expansive and thorough opportunity for people to be involved in this process. And we are here at the end of it right now. And I would also like to thank Dorothy, who has shepherded us through this whole process, Dorothy Presser, from our representative from MASC. Melissa, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on what you said a little bit, thanking everyone that you mentioned. And I just really, really want to give Dorothy a real high five for all her efforts. If there's one thing we learned in this process, some new to us, some not, is that the MASC process does work. I mean, we're here tonight with 2 excellent candidates. We had 5 candidates that were excellent come forward to us before tonight. So I just wanted to commend her on a job well done for tolerating late night emails and answering questions and guiding us through the brochure process and question process and everything that we went through, and allowing us to understand the process of having confidence with the community bringing us candidates as opposed to us looking for the candidates. So it's just been a really remarkable process getting to know everybody that we did. And I just really commend them and want to say kudos because we have 2 excellent candidates tonight. So it was a job well done. So thank you, Dorothy, and everybody else involved.
Okay, anybody else like to say anything? Joel?
Just as a point without reopening Pandora's box, I'm noticing there's about 13, we have a huge list of attendees today, we're at 54. That's about 13 or 14 more than you called for public comment. And I just wonder if you might want to just ask one last time if anyone who has not already spoken or submitted is within that group of the dozen that just showed up a little late. I'd hate for them to show up 5 minutes late and miss out because we already did it. That's up to you, obviously.
We have been looking for public input all along in this process, and I'm not going to deny it now. So if there's anybody here who's just tuned in late, what we had asked, we will reopen oral communications. And I just want to ask people that if they have sent us a letter or if they have filled out the survey or spoken to us directly or oral communications or personally, I wish you would try not to repeat yourself is all. So if anybody would like to weigh in on oral communications, if you're phoning in, you have to press *9. If you are using a device, there should be a raise your hand button somewhere that I can see, but I'm not seeing any. Okay, so we will move on. We're here tonight as we've said, to choose a superintendent. And we're going to follow the process that you all received that was outlined by Massachusetts Association of School Committees. And we will start with a motion to enter into discussion. I believe Melissa is going to make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we proceed in the discussion related to the superintendency and appointment of the superintendent of schools.
Second.
Okay. Maria, roll call vote.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Wiesen.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to start a discussion, and we will start by going through the committee, giving everybody one chance to speak. And then after that, we'll go to 2 chances to speak and 3 chances to speak until everybody has said as much as they want to say. If you want to relate information that you have received, we have checked on references. We did our best to distribute the references, but if you want to highlight that, that's fine. Also, if you want to highlight any of the conversations you've had with the public. But this is, we're just going to have an open discussion about the candidates. At the end of that, we will have a basically a roll call vote where you will state your preference. Okay. And then we will take a vote to appoint. Then what will happen is Dorothy will contact the candidate that has been selected and ask them if they accept the position. And we will recess for 10 or 15 minutes at that point, and then we'll come back into session and hear from a report from Dorothy. So that's the way it's going to go. So with that being said, I'll open it up for discussion about the candidates. Melissa, you've got your hand up. Does that mean you want to start? No.
No, but I want to know if you want to suggest maybe let's talk about one candidate and then talk about the other. I mean, as opposed to just throwing it out there. I mean, we can all, I'm just suggesting a way to start. But I don't know how the board feels.
I don't know that it makes a difference. If people have something to say about one or the other, as long as they identify which one they're talking about, I think it's, we'd go ahead. If you want to start, let's talk. We'll start with Dr. Kustka. Does anybody like to weigh in on Dr. Kustka? We have received a number of supporting letters for her, and
Can I ask a question?
sure.
So, you know, given that this obviously is going to be digitally recorded and made available, as you said, to the entire universe forever, and given that one of these 2 candidates is going to have to continue, you know, applying for similar type positions somewhere else, you know, what is the level of, or what are the parameters within which we should be having this conversation? Previously, we had limited ourselves to speaking about how candidates were a good fit for the district. Obviously, now we are down to 2. There's much more inclination or risk, if you want to say that it becomes a one versus the other type conversation. And so I'm not suggesting or putting my thumb on the scale here as to how we should do this, but I just think we should have that laid out at the beginning, whether we are following what we have been following as far as protocol for discussion, or whether at this point, you know, warts and all, we're comparing the good and the not so good on both candidates, even if it means speaking to candidates' weaknesses in this very public format.
Well, as always, I suggest that you keep your comments on the positive side. I know that when you're comparing an apple and an apple, you by saying one tastes better, you're kind of saying the other one doesn't taste as good. But I don't have any objections to any. We can proceed however the committee wants to proceed. You know, it's up to the committee as to how we proceed.
Right. Again, my thing would not be so much this apple tastes better than that apple. It would be, you know, this apple was missing a stem, but that apple had a bruise on it, right? You know, we start talking about the full character of these apples, right? And if, again, I don't know that we want to do that. I don't know that we don't want to do that, but I'm kind of torn between how do we have the robust discussion we should really have if we don't talk about the bruises that each apple might have. On the flip side, you know, are we being unfair because of the situation we're in? We're not just in, you know, a public forum at an open space where minutes will be recorded. We're, you know, going to have this out there. I really don't know how to tackle this, but I really think we need to come to consensus before we go forward.
Melissa.
I would just suggest maybe we start out by talking about what we liked about each candidate. You know, we'll start off, what do we like about Dr. Tuskus, and then we can go around saying what we liked about Mr. Lummis. And then after that, if we feel we need to have further conversation and doing a comparison, then we can do that. Or you can go right into finding out who our preference is, and we may find out that that preference may cause a discussion of comparing one to another, you know, if we're not all in agreement, because we likely aren't. So I just thought it would be good to start off highlighting the good things that we learned. You know, the community didn't get to hear about all the site visit information that we did. You know, like I said, we have two excellent candidates before us tonight, and both are worth discussing those great things that we learned about them, you know, and getting that out in the public is good, whether it's for tonight or if a candidate is a candidate again in another district, you know. So I think we put a lot of hours into these Zoom meetings, meeting people, and I think it would be great to highlight each candidate and the information that we learned from the site visits. And maybe some people didn't get to witness the interviews, and if we talk about what we learned in the interviews, I just think it's good to put about what's good out there. You know, it shows that we did our job and that we were listening, and we're really doing, making a difficult comparison here. But that's just a suggestion to get the conversation going.
If people are comfortable with that, I don't mind jumping in and talking about the positives. I mean, we learned a lot of really interesting information on the many hours that we spent on site visits. So I think it's worth putting it out there. So if people are comfortable with that, I'm happy to start with Dr. Kuska.
I think that's the way to go.
Okay.
I think we need to keep it, just go through each of the candidates and talk about what their strong points are and how you feel about them being part of our team. And so Samantha, thank you for getting us off the dime here.
No problem. So Dr. Kuska, so she has a ton of teaching experience, both in special education and general education. I think it was 15 years or more, in addition to all of her administrative work. She has a real interest and has shown a commitment to family engagement with an equity lens, which I think is super important. She has vocational experience. When it came to the site visits, I was really impressed that with every single person that we talked to mentioned that she went out of her way to create a personal relationship with each one of them. And this ranged from the IT director to the maintenance director to the nursing director. It was very clear that she did a lot of hard work connecting with everybody on her team, and it paid off. She has a lot of collective bargaining experience, so much so that I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think two past union presidents were on the site visits, two teachers that were presidents, or was it just one?
It was one current, I believe, one current union leader.
One current and one past, I
Yeah.
think, who, both had great things to say about her, which shows just sort of her ability to build consensus and trust among her teaching staff. Visibility was super important to her. And it was, that was echoed in all of the site visits. Everybody said that she was in the buildings quite a bit. It does speak to the role that she had for some time, that she was able to sort of be in the buildings as much as she was. She has an interest in integrating herself into the community. She had, the strengths sort of go on and on. I could keep going. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in. Okay.
I'll hop in on that. So I was not able to attend the site visit, so I had to go through the notes that my colleagues put together. And so one observation I'll make from that is, or the two, I guess, is that consistently people spoke about kind of her brilliance. They thought she was, just a really brilliant woman. And there was, I think, very unique to her was this statement from certain people who work with her now that they would, quote, follow her to a new district, right? They were going to, they liked working with and for her to the point where if she was somewhere else, that would incentivize them to want to be where she was. So that was huge. And then the other thing that I took away from our interviews, especially the second one, was passion for the subject matter. She even at one point, had to say, so I apologize for getting so worked up here, but she was answering a question, and you could just tell that she had such a passion for this work, that this was not, going to be just a job, right? This was something that she really, really had dedicated herself to this entire field. And so I thought those were two really good takeaways for her.
Joel, you reminded me too of that, and I don't know if anybody else picked up on this, that somebody mentioned that she's really adept in de-escalating really difficult situations, which I also think is really important. And so much so that with the particular people that she had to de-escalate, they would end up in her office having sort of a cordial conversation and a respectful conversation after the fact. So.
Laura?
So I echo and heard all the things that Joel and Samantha just mentioned. I wanted to also point out her commitment to equity, which was a really important thing she spoke about, and people spoke about her, and the role that she played in her community in Weymouth of bringing higher security protocols to the schools, and many people from the union to the administration commended her on the work that she did with very little budget. And that was another piece, is that she was able to, she spoke with us about seeing that this was a need that needed to be met, and knowing that there wasn't a line item for it, and finding the money elsewhere to make the school safer. So I was quite impressed with that.
Kathy?
The other positives, and of course I echo what has been said before, because I was on those site visits, and of course people spoke very, very highly of her. But one thing I don't think that's been mentioned yet is that her special education background informs kind of what she, most of her responses to us in our questions, and her thinking. So she brings that lens to her work. I think another consistent thing we heard in the site visits was that she was the hardest worker, often there first and last, that she's very dedicated and a terrific team member on any project she's worked on. People had great respect for her.
Okay, Melissa?
Thank you, and I concur with everything that's been said, but what I would add is that from the first interview, what I was impressed with most is, not most, but what really hit home with me is her vocational experience and the fact that she has certification in CTE education, which I think is not typical in a lot of candidates. Her passion for the social justice issues and the biases really rendered with me. And she talked about, and we also heard that she is a strong supporter of teachers and has excellent experience in the collective bargaining and budget from a high level. What I was really impressed with, which I was concerned about from the beginning, is how many people came out for her when we did site visits. We know she hasn't worked in a year as far as being in a school district. I know she's been doing consultant work and things like that, but she has a lot of fans, and she has a lot of fans that want to follow her, and that was truly impressive, because we heard from a couple people that they wished would like the capability of following her to whatever district she comes to. She came to Gloucester, even talked into the facilities director last night on the phone. He said if he wasn't 33 years in and ready to retire, he would want to come here if she was our superintendent. So we heard that several times, and I thought that was unique, because you don't hear that too often in interviews. She's clearly respected by her coworkers. And what was really cute is that kids refer to her as Princess Susan because of her interaction with kids in the classroom in the Weymouth district. She did a comprehensive paraprofessionals evaluation tool, which I thought was interesting, because I know that's something we've worked on in the past, but they found it to be successful in their district. And one thing that rendered too was that she's very strong in her communications, and but as far as what she wants from people, she doesn't want what she doesn't give, so she's clearly a good leader and can relate to people, and they trust her enough to do the work that she requests, because they feel confident and know that she's not asking anything more than she would give herself. The fact that she does the consultant on the social justice issues is really impressive to me, especially in this day and age with everything that's going on in the world. It clearly hits home with her, even in a personal way, and she's truly focused on the issues in education. So it was a great experience getting to know her, and I was impressed. I got a lot more than I thought I would, hearing from all the people that adore her and trust her and like her. So it was a really good experience.
Mayor Taken, would you like to make any
Well,
comments?
first of all, sure. First of all, I want to state, and I'm going to comply, but I'm going to say, like I said in the beginning, I thought this was wrong time to look for a new superintendent. We should extend the contract we had with Dr. Sapphire so we could figure what was happening with the epidemic, the coronavirus, to put someone new in a stage at this time when we don't know what our school's going to look like, what it's going to be like, how we're going to teach, and someone else to come in new to crash course, to be able to talk to our teachers and understand our teachers and what's going on, when right now it's chaotic. Right now we're hearing, some of the students, what's going on, the fear, are we going, what we're not going, to put someone new, to have her come right in or him come right in to do this, to me was 100% wrong. We should have respected everyone, and we should have respected the fact that whether we like him or not, or whether he wants to retire or not, we could have asked him to extend it, finish this off, get us into the school year to figure out what we're going to do with the grants, working with the money, working with that. To bring someone else new, it's very difficult. But saying that, I also didn't like the fact that I couldn't hear from some of the people who appointed these two, what was their choices, pros and cons. I didn't want it publicly. I just wanted to hear, but I wasn't allowed to that, but I got some input. I did be able, because my schedule was really crazy, and some of the scheduling to go back and forth, I wasn't allowed to go on, and then I was allowed to go on, and all this changes, and had to jump in with parents and had to jump in with public. I really didn't feel like, it was really justifiable, but I did the best I could. I did my own homework, called my own friends, called my own districts, and did my own little things. And you know what? Out of both of them, we're very lucky. You know what? We are. And I'm not saying that they're not going to be perfect or great, but I'm just saying, in all fairness, we should have waited. But that's my own personal opinion. I felt that, some of the ones that I did go to the Zooms and some of the meetings I did hear about her, her leadership is, her leadership was really good. She did connect with the teachers and the parents, which is very good. She also had experience in the teachers unions and negotiation, and that's really good. And I talked to my staff how they felt and what their concerns were, and they all agreed with me too. It's kind of hard when you bring someone into this, and it's kind of hard Zooming, Because like Joel said, that when you have a meeting, when you guys hired Dr. Sapphire and people write minutes, they didn't put the whole thing of why. Now, people aren't going to really say, and it's not fair to say, and I will not say how I feel, because the fact is it's not fair that it goes into a Zoom, someone can pick up the Zoom, and I'm looking for a new position that, you know what, that's not fair to that person, because it wouldn't have been done in minutes. It wouldn't have been done in any other school committee or anything else that you've hired before has gone word from word on a video or a Zoom. Being that said, like I said, I like the fact that, you know what, she does connect. I like the fact that she also, you know, special needs is a big thing to me. And when her interview, she did really good on her interview in that way. And when we did, some of the people that I did see that had to get off and on right away too, they had to leave for certain meetings, you know, they all had high praise. Well, I'm sorry, but can I tell you something? Unless you do your own private investigation, go on. Anyone you put on a Zoom and you're going to name to go on a Zoom is not going to say anything negative about another person. I don't care what you say and what you think. But my own investigation, my own friends, my own connection with different things, she was well liked in her community. She was, you know, well respected in the community too. And that's what I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to agree with most of everything that's been said. The thing that impressed me is her wide range of experience in public schools. She has been a special needs teacher, which is where I started my education career. And I have great respect for special needs teachers. And I have a great respect for the way they're taught to teach. I mean, we've been talking about differentiated education for 100 years, it seems, but that's how special needs teachers are taught to teach from the get-go. The fact that she has experience and certification, which is even better for us because we need somebody in CTE, is a big plus for me. All of the accolades put on her by her cohorts only stand to reinforce the statements that she's made about, they reinforce when she says that she's a good communicator or that she can bring people together. That was all backed up by information that we received on the site visits. So she's a very strong candidate, and there's a lot of positives that she has already accomplished and would be bringing to Gloucester. Anybody like to add to what they said earlier? Okay, seeing none, would we like to start to talk about Ben Lummis? Kathy.
I can start. I thought Mr. Lummis was very personable. At ease, he seemed to connect pretty easily in our interviews. And that's the feedback we got from site visits, is that he definitely is well respected, thoughtful. The word strategic was used many times in the site visits. I got the sense he's very collaborative. He has lots of experience with capital planning, long-term capital planning, as well as MSBA projects. Brookline right now has 3 school projects going on, 2 renovation addition and 1 high school renovation, 1 with MSBA funding. So this was on his plate as an interim. We learned that he was basically recommended or came to the top from his peers during the search for an interim, because the superintendent had resigned fairly quickly and they needed an internal person to take over. So it sounds like all of his peers and people and principals put him forward as the person they would love to work with as an interim, and had great faith in him. The school committee members we spoke with had the utmost respect for him and said it's a difficult district, that everything that Brookline is dealing with in general on a normal year would be challenging. And they said, multiply that by, an infinite amount in this past year that he's dealt with. So they felt that he had a lot of experience, even though he's only been an interim for a certain amount of time. When we asked him a question about, how would you lead a district that has certain items that have been identified as a priority, he started with, I think people should lead from where we are. So I think he has a good recognition of the work that's already been done, and great respect already for the work that the administrators and teachers have done. I guess I'll end with that because I have more things to say, but I'm sure other people can fill in some other things.
Melissa?
Thank you. So I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on what Kathy said because I agree with what she said, but want to delve a little bit deeper. So we as school committee members are looking through this as a lens of a school committee member. And when Kathy brought up, we had a meeting with the school committee members. There were several of them in the room, the chair, and they were prior chairs. And that was probably the most revealing about Ben that I learned about him. And Brookline, because we're all wondering, he's an interim, he's leaving after a year. Why is he only there a year? What's going on in Brookline? So we learned a lot about Brookline. And not only do they have these 3 building projects going on, but their population has doubled over the past couple of years. So there's major overcrowding. The superintendent abruptly leaving without giving notice, that caused a lot of issue. The fact that they're fighting over a site for one of the schools, gee, doesn't that sound familiar? There is a lot of anger by some of the parents up there, and now there's anger because of the decision to lay off teachers because of that contractual date. So there is a lot going on in Brookline, and the fact that Ben chose not to go back to that district next year. So it's not like he didn't have a choice. He just didn't have a choice to be superintendent. So he made that choice on his own. But the compassion and the words that we used to describe Ben by school committee members was just, it was relating to all the issues that they've dealt with and how good he is in communication was just excellent. I know Kathy was there and Laura and Samantha, and we actually felt good about being in Gloucester, realizing we didn't have half the issues Brookline does right now. And it made us feel confident that if Ben could address and deal with all the issues up there and still be well liked and respected, then he should do okay here. So that was really interesting. And learning that Ben was the right-hand man to the superintendent for many years, and the superintendent that was there was very well liked. That was good to hear too, because Ben, not only has he already been in an induction program for a year, but he also worked as a right-hand operations guy with the superintendent for 3 years prior to becoming the interim. So there's a lot of experience there that was impressive. His interviews, it is clear he is an excellent communicator and very direct. He answers your questions quickly. It's clear that he's a collaborator and builds relationships with everybody. We learned that his principals adore him. They like his leadership style. He has a lot of trust in them and they know it. He doesn't go in telling them what to do. He works with them and gives them the support that they need. And even they said if he had to deliver a bad message, it was okay because the way he communicated that message, it was understood why, because he made sure you knew the why when he walked away. So that was good to hear for difficult situations. Let me just see. I think that's it. I know that others will say some more, so I don't want to take up all the time. What was really good is in his last interview on Friday, when he brought up co-teaching, and it was interesting because we have co-teaching in our district, and this was a curiosity of mine. He said, are we doing co-teaching in name or in practice? And that caught my attention, and I know it caught the attention of some teachers that I reached out to over the weekend too. He seems to have hit the nail on the head of what might be going on here and ways to improve that. So that was an interest to me and a strength that he would bring if he was our superintendent too. But so I'll just go with that. Besides his budget experience, when he talked about zero-based budget, I thought that was great too, because it showed his willingness to learn every bit about the budget. So that was a good quote from him. And I'll stop now.
Laura?
So I'll just give a few points. obviously I back up what Kathy and Melissa heard. I was in those site visits as well. A main theme I heard was that he's a really good listener, that he's really listening to what, the community, the staff, the administration, parents are saying, and that the building of relationships, as Melissa said, then allows the difficult moments to be better. We actually had 2 librarians who had received pink slips the week before in our meeting, and they said, we're here. We don't, we don't blame him for this. This is a terrible situation. We don't blame him. And I was really struck by the fact that they were there. The Deputy Superintendent of Finance told us that he ran a phenomenal budget process and was transparent, and that people really felt like they could see and understand what was happening in the budget. I also asked about mistakes. What happens when he makes mistakes? And it was very interesting. People said, the question is, do you sink when you have a mistake, or do you learn and grow? That's the definition of a leader. And this was a group of administrators who all spoke to the fact that he'll own a mistake and then move forward, while taking responsibility. So that's, I think, important. Also, he has a real desire to be inclusive, which is something that was discussed. And he won't, again, his administrators talked about the fact that he would not supersede anyone publicly. And if there were issues, they were all dealt with privately in ways that his staff seemed to find extremely supportive. And principals felt that as well. I also will say, from my own observation as an interviewee, he was a great communicator and able to really answer the question and sort of take it to the next step. And he, as a communications focused person, he did say, I think at the first interview, I've never heard of a district that over communicated. So I like the message of communication. So that's it for me.
Samantha?
I support everything that everyone just said. I will add that folks in the site visit said that he was very transparent and communicative and balanced during the building projects, and he's had plenty of experience with them, and that he's good at breaking down complex issues to translate them to the community. He has a really good sense of humor. He is adaptable, obviously a good communicator. But the thing that really stuck out to me was 2 things in his last interview. When Jonathan asked the question about the $250,000 and what he would do with it, I felt like it showed that he had a really good and clear sense and a finger on the pulse of what's happening with COVID. I thought his answer was very well articulated, and he supported he's a technology training teachers and counseling, and he supported each one of those things with reasons why, which I thought was really important. And then the other piece was his theory on, or probably not his theory, but his idea on looking at education sort of as a spiral. So, starting at preschool and working your way up to high school, and that the path, there's sort of common learning goals from pre-K all the way up, which I thought was really important. And I think that is just a really good way to sort of bring a community district together with common learning goals. I'll stop there.
Joel, you want to weigh in?
Sure. So beyond what's been said already, I think I don't disagree with anything that's been said. One of the things that struck me through the process was how much homework he had done on this district in preparation for speaking with us, and how much he absorbed from his meeting with folk in our community. At a second interview, I asked some pretty narrow questions, and even one of which, Melissa before the meeting was like, you can't ask him about the preschool building. He's never even been there. And when I asked him the question, he was like, oh, that's the one in Blackburn. Yeah, I went and drove by. And I was like, oh, like, look at that. So I was really impressed with, his MO, for at least this process, was to learn as much as possible and absorb as much as possible, so that he was prepared at our interviews to have detailed discussions about our district. And that to me could translate well into, as the mayor pointed out, someone having to come on board in the middle of an emergency and hit the ground, like not even hit the ground sprinting, essentially, right? And just from the interview, it sounded like he has that skill set.
Mayor Taken, would you like to?
Yes, I
Yeah.
want to echo what Joel said, because he didn't hang up on us or leave after Joel asked him that question about the administration preschool. What do you think about money and this, that? So if it was anyone else, it probably would have said Joel. But, he stuck right by it. He knew what he was talking about. He did his homework. He investigated us, which anyone should. My staff thinks that both are great candidates, but they also said that, and Mr. Loomis, talking to him, knew a lot about, the structural, like Michael, DPW, the structural, what needs to be done and what you can preserve and what you can't, and being, MSBA of the failure of overrides or this or that, what you can do and cannot do, because you got to look at all of it. I like the fact that too, that like, he was interim and everyone was saying that he jumped into a pile, a manure, and it wasn't his fault, but yet he took it right on, and they didn't blame him, and they understood, and he did the best he could. And what happened was, in order for people to get pink slip, because he had to go through a deficit, and I kept telling the rest of the school committee was on that. Are you hearing about that budget? You hearing? And he took it, and he, he turned it around and did the best he could, and eliminated, instead of giving everyone pink slips or whatever, configured of what should be done and what they could and what was mandatory. But the last interview, when I threw him, like, I just right out of the blue, like, you all know, I'm going to say what I want to say. And I was talking about teachers and our students and, what they do. And, it's going to be kind of hard coming back to the school with some of the kids with the special needs. And, documented, undocumented. His response was really pleasing, of the caring compassion. It wasn't, BS. It was like, wait a minute. He went way beyond to say, yeah, you're right about that. We have that too. You think Brookline wouldn't, but we do have a lot. And you know what? That's right, because right now it's difficult for everyone, and him having that experience as far as doing, Chromebooks and, teachers having children, and how we're going to do that and how we're going to look at it. He says, we're going to all have to work this together. This, like I said, this virus didn't come with the book, and we really don't know. And everything keeps changing, different phases. I like the way, he took his time, and he was thinking, he was going, you're right on certain things. You're right 100% as far as, some of these kids are going to have more of a little difficulty coming back. Some of the kids that were excelling, I'm talking to some of the parents, and they're not doing so well. So because of being inside and not having the sports or interacting with other children, and how are we going to deal with that? And I really thought his answer was sincere, and I like the fact that he took the time. Like I said, we're very fortunate. We have 2 candidates. It wasn't the time, but if we're going to have to do what we have to do, we're very fortunate to have 2 candidates, and that's how I'm going to leave it. I just wish it was different, but I'm going to leave it at that before I put in foot in mouth and swallow.
Thank you. Melissa, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it wasn't mentioned that he has impressive contacts with the state. I mean, he worked, I got to speak with Chris Gabrielli today. I don't know if you know him. I think he ran for governor or state rep years ago, and I worked on his campaign. But now he is co-owner of the National Center on Time and Learning. And I think Ben was part of co-founding that program with him, which works on a state and national level. And Ben also did some work with the Center for Collaborative Education, Turning Point. I mean, here we are, a school district with turnaround schools, so it was impressive to hear his contacts and his knowledge and the data that he's analyzed over the different issues that impact our school district too. I think one of the people that we met on the site visit said, oh, he was on the phone last week with the Commissioner of Education, because they have a good relationship. So I was kind of impressed with his relationships that he built, not only on local levels, but state and national levels too, that he can draw on those for references if need be when he's wonder if he's superintendent somewhere.
Kathy?
I just want to add some comments from the town administrators, which was, you know, a nice group of people, the town manager, the school district CFO. One comment that one of them said was that Ben will allow others to shine, that he's very process oriented, that he has an ability to take complicated information and put it in a way for people to understand, because we had asked about the budget process and how he's perceived in terms of their town meetings and things. So, you know, one of them raved about his ability to communicate, get the message out for the best outcome at the vote, and said that Ben's input on public process was invaluable. So I think, you know, he really has that. We're all in this together as one community, not just the schools versus the town or the schools versus the city. He understands how we fit into the big picture of how we support our kids, our community, safety and everything. So I just wanted to make sure people knew we had gotten that feedback on him.
Okay, I'd like to say a few things. The first thing I'd like to say is that when Joel asked him the question about the preschool, I mean, most of the questions you ask, somebody could see coming. Nobody could see that one coming. And he did a great job sort of working through it, talking his way through the process that, you know, obviously he didn't have an answer when he started, but at the end of it, he did. And also when he talked about his process of how you might select a new curriculum for a particular thing. I liked the way he works through things and is collaborative and weighs things and can think on his feet. He did say that he's somebody who makes decisions. He's not afraid to make hard decisions. And he, you know, talked about his ability, his experience with building projects, which I think is an important ability to have coming to Gloucester in this stage of the game. Even if we're going to have building projects, no matter what happens. If the school gets built, we have a building project. If the school doesn't get built, we have a lot more building projects trying to figure out how to keep these buildings together enough so that they're safe and usable for our students. I spoke to Dr. James Marini, who is his mentor from MASS. And I asked him specifically about how he navigated politics, because everybody's strong on education and social issues and social emotional issues and social justice, but being able to navigate through city and town politics is a little more difficult for some people. And Dr. Marini said he had great relationships with the school committee and the town administration, and he was able to build consensus when he had controversial subjects. He was able to sit and work things through with people, and he reiterated that a number of times when it talked about building projects. He said, well, your job is to put the best and the right information out. It's not to say this is better than that. It's to make sure that everybody has the information that they need to make that decision themselves. So all the other things that everybody else has said are all I support. I reiterate what I've heard. So that's it. Does anybody else like to weigh in some more?
We have one or to continue the conversation to the next step.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to propose for the next step is that we have a roll call vote and that everybody basically states their preference. If they want to elaborate on why, that's fine. But the alternative is that we we make a motion and put one candidate forward and vote it up or down. So Samantha, you got your hand up?
So I have a quick question. At what point do we at all share some of the feedback from the surveys? Because I think that I know it certainly informed a lot of my decision making. So
Okay. I think that we can do that right now. This is while we're still having a discussion. Would you like to start?
Melissa, do you have all the numbers in front of you? Yeah. Do you want to provide that?
Melissa, would you like to, you did a compilation of different aspects of the survey. Would you like to give those to us?
Yeah, so this is clearly just from a numbers perspective, not getting into the comments. So we received 2 packets, one named Lummis and one named Cuska. And I was a little confused at first because I thought it meant what candidate they were supporting, but it actually meant what candidate they wanted to talk about. So in Lummis's packet, there was 36 responses. Out of those 36 responses, 12 administrators were in favor of him, 6 municipal officials, 8 staff or faculty members, and 4 parent guardians were all in favor for Lummis. Out of that packet, 2 parents were in favor of Cuska and 1 staff member. And also in that packet, there were 3 parents that were unsure of either, but they just wanted to get feedback on both candidates. So that was a total of 30 in favor for Lummis, 3 in favor for Cuska, and 3 unsure. In Susan Cuska's packet, there was 27 responses. In those responses, 1 administrator, 1 municipal official, 5 staff and faculty, and 4 parents were in favor of Dr. Cuska. Of that packet, 5 administrators, 2 municipal officials, and 1 staff and faculty was in favor of Ben Lummis. 5 administrators were unsure, 1 parent was unsure, and 2 staff members thought that both candidates would be great. So there was a total of 11 in favor for Cuska, 8 in favor for Lummis, 6 were unsure, and 2 for both. That was a total altogether in our packets, both of them, of 38 in favor of Lummis, 14 in favor of Cuska, 9 unsure, and 2 for both. So that's the number part of it.
Would anybody else like to weigh in on feedback they've received from the community or people who took part in the interviews?
I mean,
Joel?
go ahead.
Oh.
Sure. So, I received, along with all of you, they pushed everything I had over to the committee. Some people contacted me in favor of Ben Lummis, and 1 person contacted all of us and then contacted me again about Dr. Cuska. And it, some things were brought up in both instances that really made me think. And what I've been trying to reconcile previously and re-reconcile again today is what this district needs. I hate to use the word triage, but given the fact that, we have 2 schools in turnaround, given the fact that, although, thank you, Mayor Taken, thank you, Mr. Destino, looks like the FY21 is going to be somewhat insulated. We don't know what FY22 is going to look like, depending on how far this COVID crisis goes. That's kind of weighing on between the 2, which way I was leaning, versus when everything settles, what are the strengths of each, and who could take this district further. I don't know necessarily that it's the same person for both of those questions, and that was kind of something that was kind of rolling around in my mind that would be good for everyone to kind of think about is immediacy versus long term. The answer may be the same in your instances of who's immediate and who's long term, but from the mixed, the people who were speaking about, in favor of, Mr. Lummis, are really talking about like what we got to tackle right now. And the comments I got, especially the phone call I had today about Dr. Kuska, were more like, what she could do long-term to elevate this district. I thought that was an interesting dichotomy in the way in which some of the two candidates were spoken about by those who reached out.
Samantha, you would? No, you're all set. Anybody else like to weigh in? Melissa?
I just want to say I don't agree with Joel on that last comment about long-term versus short-term, because I saw the opposite, and I'm sure it's just perception in the way you read the comments. No one's right or wrong. But I saw more comments talk about budgeting and operations more so in his comments than I did in hers. So I don't think either one of them were short-term, long-term favored. I think it was more bigger picture versus smaller picture, education versus everything. And that was the feedback that I took from the community responses. And in addition to the 20 or 30 phone calls that I had over the weekend with different people who either reached out to me or I reached out to get a pulse on what the community wants, because that's important in this decision.
Anybody else like to weigh in on before we move this forward? Okay. Laura?
I just want to say, as I spent time talking to people and reading the surveys, and then going back over my notes from all these site visits, I was really just struck by that these are two fine educators and two fine people, and that they have different strengths, and I think that's true, and different experiences, but in my thinking, I was also thinking a little bit about the way that Joel just described some of how he took things. Is we have a lot of challenges right now, immediate, very, very immediate challenges, and then going into the next years. But I just wanted to say that these are just really fine people with very, diverse talents and strengths, and it made it a very hard decision. So.
Can I have one more question?
Sure, Joel.
So Laura just ended her piece by saying it made this a very hard decision, suggesting that decision's been made. And so my question is to my colleagues, has your decision been made? In which case, is there a need to keep talking? Or, are my colleagues open to, have your conversation before they consider their thing finalized?
Laura?
So thank you for pointing that out, Joel. I am always interested in hearing from my colleagues and having an open debate about this. I think because of what we've already discussed around the openness and the foreverness of this conversation, there's only so much conversation we can really have in this forum. So I am listening and taking in everything we're all saying. And I felt that I needed to come into this with some ideas for myself.
Joel?
Okay, so I'm gonna at least, I think I can say this with staying within our protocol, with the hopes that maybe it sparks conversation, just to make sure that the decision being made is, has been had, that we've had this conversation, because we've had this conversation with, constituents calling into us, and we've had this conversation internally reading the surveys, but we as a collective 7 haven't had this conversation. And so I'm going to frame this actually using 2 of the other candidates that have both gone on and found jobs. What was the other gentleman's name that we interviewed? Can someone remind me who's from the Midwest?
Kurt
Lasco? Right, so for me, going through that first round of interviews, I was really drawn to Nan Murphy, because she gave that example about being in Lynn and saying, you know, I have the second lowest performing elementary school, the lowest performing, got taken over by the state, got $1 million extra. I got none of that help and had to bring it up with it, right? And I thought that was an immediate, like, okay, that addresses some immediate issues we're facing. Mr. Lasco, I thought was on the other side, where I said, oh, you know, he's got some really nice, you know, broad ideas and could really, you know, he sounded very, very forward from where our district is right now. And I was not sure that someone with that set of strengths was going to be able to take advantage of them in this district until someone more like Ms. Murphy came and helped deal with some immediate things. And so I'm thinking the same way about Dr. Kuska and Ben Loomis in that, you know, I think that there may be some things that Dr. Kuska could bring to this district that would be, you know, really beneficial. However, I'm leaning toward Ben because I think for the foreseeable future, Ben's skill set is more applicable to the needs we're going to have in the immediate term. And that was, again, kind of mirrored some of the things I read in the comments. Maybe I was reading my biases into the comments. I don't know. But that's where I kind of come from. And I'd really just like to hear from my colleagues as to if they're leaning one way or the other, you know, why.
If you want, Melissa?
Say before that, Jonathan? I didn't hear what you were saying. You were muted.
I just said we were going, what I said is that we're going to get there of people stating their preference very soon. But we continued the discussion about different candidates because Samantha wanted us to talk about the input, basically, that we've got, that we hadn't talked about. So, Melissa, what do you, and then
So I just want to say, I came into this with experience of doing 6 or 7 superintendent searches in the past between Gloucester and the Tech. I think 3 or 4 at the Tech and 3 here. So my lens is a little different than those who are new to the committee. And my experiences are different because I've been on a school committee for 14 years and lived through tragedies on school committees where people had to be held accountable, not in Gloucester. The way that I look at things in this particular search is looking at big picture. You know, I know we're school committee members and our primary focus is supposed to be on education and doing what's best for kids, there's no doubt. But we're also a business. You know, we're a $42 million business that has demands on it other than teaching and learning. So the way I look at it is who is the candidate who is best to serve all the roles of a superintendent, not necessarily just 1 or 2. And not only that, but what are their connections and what are their support systems for the issues that we have, and what experiences and support can they bring just because of who they are to our school district. So each candidate clearly has strengths in different areas, and there's no doubt this is probably one of the most difficult decisions I've ever had to make in this role, because you like them both and you're fighting for both and trying to figure out which direction we're going to go in. But I mean, at the end of the day, after everything we've gone through, which this committee has done so much work getting to know the candidates, I know that I'm ready to vote. I know who I'm supporting. Do I like the fact that we can't have both? Yes. It's awful that you can't take both for their strengths, but we can only take one. And I know I feel confident in who can do the whole job, not just part of the job, because we have needs in all areas of the operations and teaching and learning in our district, not just some areas. So for me, I know where I'm at and I feel confident.
Kathy?
I just want to echo Melissa's sentiment in terms of all the information I have gathered and thought through, and people I've talked through, that my preference is not just for today, it's for the long term. I think there's a vision. I think there's definite growth potential for the individual as well as for the district. You know, we'll both what gets brought immediately will help and what we do together collectively between teachers and administrators and school committee and all that thought process of just constantly trying to get better. I have faith that my preference would grow and lead along the same way as well. So I just wanted to say that.
Can I just ask, I'm really sorry if I'm missing the point here, but this keeping our hand close to our chest like a poker game, I don't know why, why we can't say, my preference is so-and-so. Like Kathy said a very eloquent, explanation for her preference, but wouldn't say who her preference was. And before we go to this roll call vote of like, I want this person, I want that person, wouldn't it be nice to hear who these really nice thoughts are assigned to? Or maybe that makes other people uncomfortable. I don't know. I'm just like, why are we sharing everything? What cards?
I didn't share the name because Jonathan had a process of which
the process.
about.
I'm Brody. I'm sorry. I didn't get it.
The process, we can move forward in the process where people will take a roll call vote and people will state their preference. That is what I proposed. But
And an explanation?
They can elaborate on it all they'd like. But I still got two people with their hands up. And Samantha?
I do want to piggyback a little bit on what Joel's saying, because unlike any other hiring situation I've ever been in, you can have conversations with your colleagues behind closed doors, and we are not allowed to do that here. So I do think, that back and forth is important, and to be able to say, this is why I'm making this decision, I do think there's value in that, and I think it's important for the community to hear why we're making that decision. And maybe something I say will persuade somebody else, but if we don't really give each other that chance, I don't, it's really hard because we're not able to sort of have that conversation outside of this forum. So when is a better place and time to do it than now?
Melissa, you have your hand up? No. Okay, so the way I would suggest we proceed, or I'm going to say how we're going to proceed, is we're going to have a roll call vote. You'll state your preference. You have as much time to elaborate on why that's your preference, and we'll go through the entire committee. At the end of the vote, I will ask if anybody would like to change their vote. Okay? And if you want to change your vote, you'll be allowed to change your vote. And then we'll tally the vote, and then they'll take a motion to appoint the next superintendent of Gloucester Public Schools. Okay? So we will start with Laura. You get to be first.
Really? I'm first? Okay. So after a lot of thought and as many conversations and as reading thoroughly all of the comments that we receive from the public, I have decided on Ben Lummis. A big part of that was listening to the public. We made a point of, the school committee decided not to be present on the screening committee. We decided to sort of remove ourselves from some of this so that the community could really speak. And so I wanted to listen, really listen as much as possible to the survey results. I had a special ear to what the teachers said, and unfortunately in the results that I saw, there wasn't one clear decision from the teachers, and I also had different opinions personally from different teachers. As I said earlier, I think these are both such fine candidates and fine people with strengths that could really benefit this district. But for me, Mr. Lummis's ability to connect and communicate with us and with the community during the site visits was really significant. And the ways that the site visits that we made, where they talked about his really listening, his collaborative approach, his ability to to communicate really tough issues around building projects and other things happening in Brookline, and how he did everything possible to put information out that would inform the public. And that's very, very important to me. It's a priority for me. And I hope that he could bring that here to Gloucester. And I think we'd have to do our part to give him a very thorough onboarding process, especially as the mayor said, coming into this moment, to make him a successful superintendent.
Samantha?
Are you targeting the new people?
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm doing it in descending order of, what do they call it, seniority.
That's not kind, just to be honest. So I'm going to echo what Laura said. My choice is Ben Lummis. For similar reasons, I think it's really important to note that in the community surveys, overwhelmingly, the community members spoke in favor of Ben Lummis, particularly around his ability to communicate. I think he did an excellent job answering questions. He was direct and to the point. I mean, I felt like he answered every part of every question, which was really important. I never sort of walked away feeling like I didn't get a clear sense of what he was thinking. I think his focus based on the site visits, I think almost every single person said that relationships and civility were sort of themes in the way that he leads. And I think beyond communication, those are really important for this district right now. And I think his ability to lead a district as an interim superintendent, going through as much as what we learned Brookline was going through, and do that with grace and the desire to continue to be a superintendent during this really difficult time, I think is really important. And I think having somebody who's really had experience working in a school district during the COVID-19 era, I guess, is something that we really need. I mean, I think this is something that's going to make or break sort of our district, in my opinion. I think the way that we handle this is going to be really important for just this year and for the coming years. So I want somebody who's really well-versed in how this is being played out in other districts.
Okay, Joel?
Yeah, I don't need to repeat everything that I said, but my choice at the moment is Ben Lummis also. Again, kind of as I said, I just feel like, especially over the length of the 3-year contract that this next superintendent's going to have, his skill set is the skill set that this district is going to need the next 3 years at least, in navigating what we're already navigating and what's right around the corner.
Kathy?
My choice is Ben Lummis. Without reservation, I think he brings an energy to his engagement with people that I find immediately disarming. I found it disarming. I heard that in the site visit interviews that people think really well of him and working with him. I heard from him when he answered our questions, this enjoyment of working with people to solve problems. Happy when people identify problems, but also wants to work with those who want to solve them. So I view it as not a top-down approach, but the approach that we have come to expect, that it's a collaborative approach and that all voices matter. I think it's really informative, and one that, an opinion we should really have great respect for, is that the administrators overwhelmingly recommended or felt highly about Ben. as their top choice. Some comments were clear choice, heartily endorse. I mean, there were just some real excitement, I think, in their comments. One said they feel like he'd have the ability to bring diverse groups together, which I think is really important. We have some terrific educators throughout our district, and I think the more we're all working together and finding commonality and bringing those ideas for the benefit of our students, the better off everybody will be. Educators will grow, students will have opportunities, and students will grow even more so than they have been. And finally, I think given what we learned about what Brookline is as a district and what they currently have going on, the fact that he handled it and received praise for a situation that probably was not, most people would be destined to fail or at least get a neutral, lukewarm comment. But they really respected him and thought he did a really good job. And they pointed out that he, even though he might not have been part of a problem, he took the leadership role and took those hits, even though he may not have even had anything to do with how the problem, bubbled up. So I think I see a leadership with him, leadership qualities, and I just think he'd be a great fit for us for now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Melissa?
Thank you. My choice has been Lemus. So I echo the reasons that have been stated before me. One of the reasons I think he would be a great fit here is to build and strengthen our relationship with our unions. Ben has been on all sides of the unions, and we heard that he empowers teachers and teachers feel empowered under his leadership. And I think that's something that's desired in our school district. And I think he'll bring some strength there and collaboration in a way that we really need. That to me is a big issue in our community. The building projects that's going on too. I mean, he's worked with successful overrides. He's worked with unsuccessful overrides. But one thing that was clear is that his communication through those processes was impeccable, and that everybody understood what would happen if it passed or it didn't. So he clearly communicated and articulated in a methodical way for their community to understand the issues, especially where they're going through 3 projects, not just one. Budget, like Kathy said, the town leaders respect him. They say his presentations were excellent. Knowing that we know our budget for this year, but we're all hearing how next year is probably going to be a tough year. I want to know that we have someone with the skills and abilities to get us through that really difficult year. I think it's 2022 fiscal year, and I think he's the guy to get us through there. His relationships with anyone that he works with, his communication skills, they can't be beat. And his work that he does is just very impressive on all levels, whether it be teaching and learning or consulting and working with leaders in other districts that he's done. I think we just are going to benefit from those relationships in a way that we've never seen. Both surveys, like Sam said, she supported the survey information. The surveys information we got today gave us direction. And the survey that we initially took in the beginning to find out what the community wants in our leader, Ben fits all those boxes that the community thought was important, and it wasn't just educational needs. So between talking with references and everything, I mean, he just seems to be the best fit right now. Like Joel mentioned, it's a 3-year contract. There's a statement out there that superintendents don't often last more than 5 years. Ben has talked about relocating here because his family's from here. So all those things were just checks in the box for me to make me think that he's the better of 2 excellent candidates that we interviewed. So Ben is my choice.
Safafia?
Okay. Well, you know what? Like I said, we had 2 great candidates, and you know what? I talked to my staff who have to deal with, the superintendent more than I do. I get to just bitch and complain and then do what I need to do. But they have to do it every day, and they have to work with the school. And we made that commitment that we are going to, work together. And you can see that when DPW comes on and Mike Hill and what needs to be done. I talked to, we got input from Kenny Costa, who is our auditor, and he said both, and he chose Loomis, and everyone I talked to was Mr. Loomis. And in all fairness, when people say, well, he came around and looked, people need to know too, so they don't think we don't know. Mr. Loomis's mom lives here. So I'm hoping that he knows Gloucester. And if he doesn't, shame on him, because that means he doesn't visit his mom. So, but that being said, because I don't want people to think we didn't know about him and who his mom is, and I won't hold anything against anyone. But the fact is, Ben was the better candidate for my staff. Like I said, I like the last comment, but what I found is that the committee who submitted both their names, a couple of them changed after they heard the interviews. A couple of them said that, I thought it was Ben, but I like the way she did this, and I like some of it. So that's why it's great that, everyone who did do all the interviews and did their investigation did, because your first impression, oh, that was great. But until you really go into some of these things, until you really see someone to do something, or really, it always changes. Like I said, I like somebody else, and Melissa Texera says, well, Swatha, we really need someone that's going to help with the budget and everything else. And, these two. And I says, you know what, I'll go with it. That's what the school committee wants. That's okay. Understanding, because you dealt with it before. But I'm going to stick with what my employees want, because we're a team. And this team says Ben.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophia. Well, I guess it's my turn to vote. I was really happy that we have a consensus. I was sort of being gnawed away. I said, what if it's a 3-3 vote when it comes to me? I don't really want to be the person making that one decision, because they're both good candidates. But I've said all along that it isn't that they're not qualified, or neither of them could do the job. It's that we are looking for the person who's going to be the best fit for the team that we have in place, and to work with the people that we have, and to work with this community, to work, as the mayor said, to work with the city department heads, and that's really critical. We have support with our assistant superintendent on teaching and learning, and we have a good team, and I think that Ben Loomis will be the excellent leader of that team, and bring it forward to greater heights, to dealing with the issues in front of us. The fact that he's been in place as a superintendent for this past year when schools closed, and he's been in all the conversations about how to reopen school and how to do distant learning and all of that stuff. To go along with what Joel said, I feel that he's going to hit the ground, sprinting. So my support is for Ben Loomis. Now, is there anybody who would like to change their vote? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion, and the motion would be, I'm going to read it.
Want me to read it?
Sure. I just found it.
I'll just make the motion. It'll be there.
Okay.
So I move that Ben Loomis be appointed superintendent of schools for Gloucester, subject to the successful negotiation of a contract of employment mutually agreeable to the candidate and the school committee, and signed by both parties or their designees.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, roll call vote, Maria.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Faza,
Yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weaston.
Yes.
And it is unanimous. Dorothy, you are now going to contact Ben Lomas, and you will get back to us.
I will do that.
Okay, it is 7:29. How long would you want?
Well, it depends on how quickly he answers the phone, I guess.
Okay, well, if
You want
I,
to give yourself, you want to give yourselves like 10 minutes and then
Sure.
I'll,
okay, so we'll reconvene at 7:40.
Okay.
My suggestion is that you don't leave the Zoom meeting, that you just turn off your mic and your video so you don't have to log in again, okay? So we will recess for 10 minutes. Okay, we're back in session, and we're going to get a report from Dorothy.
Mr. Lummis is deeply honored and accepts the position, obviously pending successful contract negotiations.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lummis. And thank you, Dorothy. I'd like to reiterate again thanks to Dorothy and all the support that she gave us in this process. And it's, like I say, it's been a long haul, but I think we have done our due diligence. I think that we have selected the right person for us, and we will welcome him perhaps Wednesday night if he's available at our next school committee meeting. Okay.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and it's certainly been a pleasure to get to know so many people in the Gloucester community. So I've long process, but I've enjoyed it.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have any comments before we adjourn? Kathy.
Just wanted to, I know Melissa started with this, but I wanted to finish with this and thank so many people for being involved, highly involved and engaged in this process. I think the city department heads really, are sincere in their effort to work with the schools and have a good relationship. And I think that's been built over time. So it's nice that they've continued that involvement because, we do need to work together, and I appreciate their opinions. We had counselors participate. We had tons of parents participate, and the administrators and teachers, and all of their input is so vital to this process. So I just want to thank them. And also, we had 75 people attending this meeting tonight. So people are clearly engaged. So that's been great. Sorry about Morris.
Anyone else like to make a comment? Then do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Maria, roll call vote.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all very much. And thank you, Grant and Brendan, for facilitating this meeting and all of the meetings that have led up to this one. And I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Night.